What's good? It's your boy Fanon. Going to talk about Errol Spence and Bernard Hopkins and some things that Bernard Hopkins has said about Errol Spence Jr. And in the short of what I'm going to say is that, look, man, even though you don't necessarily like the source, don't take away from the message or don't judge the message by the messenger, I guess. Because what Bernard Hopkins said about Errol Spence Jr. was very, very supportive of him. Is very supportive of him. I don't think that the guy like Bernard Hopkins could have given Errol Spence Jr. any higher praise than he gave. And the critique that he gave him and the things that people, like that highlighted the video, like the quote that they used and the things that some people focused on, to me, I think really did take away from the message that Bernard Hopkins had about Errol Spence Jr. And I'll explain. Now, before I do that, thank you. Welcome back to the channel, subscribers. Also, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell icon, and so you can be notified when we drop more videos. And thank you again for everybody that supports the channel and the live streams, supports through Super Chat, Patreon, and Venmo. We really, 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 truly appreciate it. So in short, what Bernard Hopkins gave an interview to, I believe it was Fight Hub, and Marcos Villegas. I'm probably killing his name, but a guy that I think is one of the better people in boxing. I've liked Marcos for a long time, and I think he does good work. And so he was talking about Errol Spence Jr., and he said that the thing that people focused on, the people that came to my comment section and brought this stuff to light to me, was the fact that Bernard Hopkins called Errol Spence Jr. Green, and he said that his camp shouldn't let him believe everything that's being said about him, because if they do that, then he's going to find out what other people are saying is real isn't real, and you don't want that. You don't want to find that out when you're sitting on your behind in the middle of a boxing match, because none of that stuff carries into the ring with you. Now, that could be considered, if you look at that and you just take that in and of itself, that could be considered a criticism. But take it in context to what he said, and also if you think and listen to what Errol Spence Jr. had said about his coach, Derek James, you'll see that pretty much that they're saying the same thing. Errol Spence says that he appreciates in Derek James the same message that he gets from Derek James, on a regular basis, is the same message that Bernard Hopkins is given in this interview. Now, the full context of it was that Bernard Hopkins said that Errol Spence Jr. can fight. He's like, just straight up, that dude can go, that guy can fight, and he's dangerous for anybody. And as he continues to learn, he's going to get, if somebody can't beat him soon, then he's going to get to the point where he's just going to steamroll and nobody's going to be able to touch him. And he said nobody's going to be able to touch him no matter what promotional banner they're under. Now, when he said no matter what promotional banner they're under, the only welterweight, the only person in top level boxer in the welterweight division that would fall under a different promotional banner would be Terrence Crawford. So for him to give him that type of praise and say, look, this dude can fight straight up. He's the real deal. And what he needs, but he has to make sure now that he's getting all this hype and people are trying to tell him how good he is, and he's starting to, really feel like he's the man in a welterweight division, is that he's got to ignore all that when he goes into training, and he needs people around him that are not yes men. People that are going to say, look, you need to work on this, you need to work on that, you need to work on this, you need to work on that, you need to continue to get better. Because to me, me being Bernard Hopkins, he's a little green to me. Now that Bernard Hopkins saying somebody's a little green. Look, everybody's a little green to Bernard Hopkins. I mean, Bernard Hopkins is a guy that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer in the boxing ring. He's one of the most wily and experienced. He's one of the most savvy boxers and intelligent boxers in recent memory. He got more out of his talent, as much or more out of his physical talent as anybody that I can think of in boxing. So for him to look at a young boxer, because Errol Spence Jr. he's a young boxer. That's what he is. I mean, Errol Spence Jr. only has 24. He only has 24 contests. Right? He just turned 28 years old. He started boxing late, so he's fresh, but he only has 24 boxing matches. I don't know how anybody would expect him not to be green. It's not as if he's Vasyl Lomachenko and had 400, 500, however many amateur bouts and turned pro, when he was 25 years old. He's a guy that, he turned pro, I think, when he was 22 years old. I don't think he picked up boxing till sometime around he's 15 years old. So he's clearly learning on the job. Now, it just so happens to be that he's learning quickly. He's incredibly talented, and he's got a monster work ethic. And he's training, and he's blessed to have one of the best trainers in boxing working with him, who have been working with him for many years. So I don't have any beef whatsoever with what Bernard Hopkins had to say. And I'm a big supporter of Errol Spence Jr. And I think that's right. Errol Spence Jr. should stay away from that. He should stay away from people that would tell him that he's already made it. Because he's not made it. He's not gotten to where he wants to get. He's on his way to getting to where he wants to get. He said he wants to unify the 147-pound division. He's got one belt. He's on his way to do that. He wants to be a Hall of Famer. He's won a championship belt. He's got his name out there. He's beaten good competition. He's on his way there. But in order for him to get where he needs to go, he's going to need more experience. He's going to get more experience. And that's what Bernard Hopkins said. As he continues to go, then, as he continues to improve his skills, work on his skills, get more experience, that's what experience is going to bring to him. And for a guy to say that who was fighting up until he's 50, pretty much right up until around the time he's 50 years old, hey, man, that's even though you might not there's a lot of people who have issues with Bernard Hopkins, and for good reasons. Bernard Hopkins says some things that I don't agree with, and he's associated with people, and he said some things that I didn't agree with. He's not said some things that I wish he would say, and he's associated with some people who I don't have a whole lot of admiration and affection for. But that a bit of advice that he gave is just spot on as far as what I can see. And now then he also talked about Keith Thurman. And he said that Keith Thurman would test Errol Spence Jr. Keith Thurman is he's an awkward, unorthodox guy, and who can really make people look bad when they get in the ring with him. And you've seen that with Keith Thurman against Danny Garcia, against Sean Porter, against Collazo. You've seen that. But at the same time, Bernard Hopkins said, but Keith Thurman's going to have to tighten up his defense, and he's going to have to do some things in a bout with Errol Spence Jr. that he hasn't done before. And ultimately, I think Errol Spence Jr. was going to win that on a decision. Now, he's given Keith Thurman enough credit to say that Keith Thurman can go the distance, and that very well might be the case. I can't say that I pick Errol Spence Jr. to win that bout. Where, how, what round, whether it's unanimous decision split, I can't say that, because I do have enough respect for Keith Thurman to acknowledge that this guy is a champion, and he is somebody that has had multiple title defenses. He's won multiple belts. He's been in there with top-notch boxers, and he's a top-notch talent. So even saying that Errol Spence Jr. will get tested by Keith Thurman, I don't think that that's untrue, and I think that that's something that Errol Spence should expect. Just because Keith Thurman is acting like he was scary, don't mean Keith Thurman's going to get up in there and not is not going to throw any shots, right? If Keith Thurman took a bout against Errol Spence Jr., Keith Thurman, I have no doubt Keith Thurman's going to come in there trying to defend himself. And if he gets a groove and figures that he can do something to Errol Spence Jr., that he's going to do his all to try to go and get that. You know, I don't think that he's nothing that I've seen in the ring from Keith Thurman tells me that this dude is a wallflower, you know, and he's not gonna be aggressive and try to go get that win. It's just the things that he's done out of the ring, the injuries and all that. But at the end of the day, I still predict I would still take Errol Spence Jr. in that bout all day. The most interesting thing, again, and I alluded to it earlier in this video, is if you hear what Bernard Hopkins implied about Terrence Crawford, which was if Errol Spence continues to get experience and he continues to roll, then he's going to beat everybody at 147 pounds. Now that's a major endorsement from Bernard Hopkins. So, you know, I can understand why people wouldn't necessarily, you know, might think that Bernard Hopkins was hating on Errol Spence Jr. because he said he was green. You know, a little green to him. But that's Bernard Hopkins. Bernard Hopkins has been the full fight life cycle, right? He's done it. He's done all you can do. He's done all you can do in boxing. He's been a unified champion at 160 pounds. He's had more legitimate major championship title defenses than anybody else at middleweight. And he won titles at 175 pounds. He's been in the ring with James. He didn't get in there with James Toney. I would have loved to seen that. But, you know, he's been in there, even though he lost, he's been in there with Joe Calzaghe. He's been in there with Roy Jones Jr. a couple times. I mean, he's been in there with Felix Tito Trinidad. He's been in there with top-notch boxers. He's even been in there at an old age and was able to go the distance with Sergey Kovalev at dang near 50 years old. So, and the only thing that could get him through that last 10, 12 years of his career was his experience level. And I'm sure he's thinking, man, if I knew what I knew now when I was 28 years old, I'd have never lost to Roy Jones Jr. or, you know, who knows what he would have thought, you know, that type of thinking. And so I think that's fair from a guy like that. And that's some wisdom that if I was Errol Spence Jr., I would at least, I'll put it this way, I would hope that Errol Spence Jr. would be humble enough and open-minded enough to take. And again, the way that he refers to Derek, James coaches him, he said, look, Derek James in the press conference after the bout with Carlos Ocampo, he said, look, man, Derek James ain't never happy. Everything I'm doing, it's like he never focuses on what I'm doing right. He's always focused on what I'm doing wrong. Because he's like, look, man, you don't need me to tell you your strengths. You need me to point out your weaknesses so that you can tighten those up and you can continue to get better. And so that mentality, the mentality of his coach, the way that his coach is talking, and the way that Errol Spence is talking makes me believe that they're of the same mindset that Bernard Hopkins is. And hopefully that all of the publicity that he's going to get in Dallas, Texas, and around the world doesn't knock him off of that. But I don't think that it will, because if you look at the way that he's come up, having started boxing late, and just his demeanor, his kind of quiet demeanor, even though he's definitely sounding, you know, more and more confident, which is right. You want the guy to be confident, but you do hope for a guy like that to continue to strive to get better. And I think that's what he's doing. And I think that's the message that Bernard Hopkins had, and I have no issue with it. You know, so in this one, you know, I gotta support the executioner on this, man. I got to. And if Errol Spence Jr. can achieve the things that Bernard Hopkins has achieved in his career, then hey, man, basically Bernard Hopkins has achieved in his career everything that Errol Spence is looking to achieve. He's a Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. He's a unified 160-pound champion and the longest reigning 160-pound champion ever. right? He's and those are the goals that Errol Spence Jr. has. The one thing that Errol Spence Jr. could be on pace to do that Bernard Hopkins wasn't able to do was be that, that mega pay-per-view star. But in order to do that, Errol Spence the reason Errol Spence might be able to do that is because Errol Spence has a little bit of luck that Bernard Hopkins didn't have. Errol Spence Jr. has a weight class that is stacked with talented, well-known, super talented boxers that if he comes out on the top of, can catapult him into being that, that big time superstar. So anyway, man, I wish the best for Errol Spence Jr. And I appreciate the knowledge that's shared by people, even, Bernard Hopkins, even though, I don't always agree with everything he has to say, but I dang sure ain't going to argue with him when he says something like this. And with that, I'm out. Peace.